Hi, I'm Joey Lott, and in this video, I'd like to share with you a unique understanding of anxiety that can lead to a lasting cure for anxiety in your life. And this is true no matter how severe your anxiety and no matter how long-standing. In my own case, I've used this understanding to cure myself of decades-long severe anxiety that was so crippling that by the time I was 30 years old, I was homeless and starving because I didn't know what else to do. I have also coached many other people using this knowledge and this system in order to cure themselves of anxiety. So I know that this works for others, and I know it can work for you. To be clear, this does require maturity. And what I mean by that is you have to understand that this is not going to just be the miracle thing that I can snap my fingers and the feelings that you've been struggling with and thinking that you couldn't possibly accept are going to just vanish and go away, and you're going to get to go about your life and have whatever experiences you think you should only have. This is different. This is about actually understanding your own experience, becoming intimate with your own experience, and opening up to dimensions of yourself that you had previously pushed away. Now, that can sometimes seem a little scary at first, but what I promise you is that this is really, honestly, the lasting cure that you have hoped for but didn't know where you could find it. This is the thing that actually works. So if you're ready, let's get into it. So what is it that I want to share with you? What I'd like to invite you to is to discover your own direct experience of what you have called anxiety. Now, most of the time, we don't do this. Most of the time, we just say, I'm experiencing anxiety, and then we Google cure for anxiety. And we read what people have to say, or we watch some videos about what people have to say, and we try all kinds of things. We might try trauma release exercises, we might try drugs, we might try herbs, we might try supplements, we might try special diets, we might try yoga, we might try meditation, all kinds of things. And many of those things can be wonderful. But unfortunately, in and of themselves, those things rarely lead to a lasting cure for anxiety, because fundamentally what's necessary is that we have to be willing to take a look and discover for ourselves what our own experience is. So let's take a look at that right now. Whether you're experiencing anxiety right now, or you can just remember a recent time in which you experienced anxiety, you can start to notice that there is a habitual conditioned reactivity. When you experience what you think of as anxiety, the tendency for most of us is just to, as I described earlier, quickly react based on the conditioning and the story that we have about the experience. So we just have a label, anxiety. And we're, I'm experiencing anxiety. Quick, what do? I want it to go away. But when you have the maturity to realize that that hasn't worked, then it's time to start to take a look at what's actually happening. So right now, just notice that if you were to just take away the label of anxiety, and you were to just allow all of the stories and the ideas and the urgency to fix it that you might have, that prior to all of that, or underneath all of that, is the direct experience of your own sensations and feelings that is the foundation of what you call anxiety. So you can easily prove this to yourself, because if you didn't have the feelings and the sensations, would you have anxiety? And clearly the answer is no, because just having the word anxiety is not the same as anxiety. Just having the memory of anxiety is not the same as anxiety. Anxiety is actually the feeling and the sensations. Now, this might seem obvious once you see it, but don't overlook the importance of this. Don't dismiss it. as irrelevant or unimportant, because this is so important. So just stay with me for a moment and notice that if you didn't have the experience of the feelings and sensations of what you call anxiety, then there would be no anxiety. So what's more true of anxiety is the feelings and sensations, not the label or the story of anxiety. And in fact, you could even see that your experience of anxiety is the only experience that you can know. You don't know what my experience of anxiety was. You don't know what somebody else's experience of anxiety is. So the label anxiety can be misleading because your experience that you call anxiety might be very different from what somebody else calls anxiety. So the Googling just cure for anxiety actually doesn't turn out to be all that helpful in many cases. So start to just notice that there are these feelings and sensations. And then notice that out of habit, there's a conditioned reactivity, so that whenever these feelings and sensations arise, the habit is to quickly react and seek for some kind of remedy or solution. But when you see that that hasn't worked, then it's time to start to go the other direction. Instead of moving outward and looking for the quick fix, it's time to actually start to, in a sense, move inward and to start to settle into a subtler dimension of yourself that you'd previously overlooked. And this is important because this is where the real cure comes from. The real cure comes from awareness and open, curious quality to your presence, not from the quick fix. And this is perennial knowledge. This is what it means to know thyself. To know thyself is to tune into these dimensions of yourself that you had previously overlooked, and to trust that there is something here of tremendous value that can help you in your life. It's just that you've overlooked it, and the culture, broadly speaking, devalues this. But if you believe that it doesn't have any value, it's at your own peril. So instead of just believing that, be willing to take a look right now and just start to tune in to your own direct experience. And you can notice that prior to the labels and the stories, there's just the direct, raw sensation. So you don't actually know that the sensation is called anxiety. And in fact, if you're willing just to let the label come and go and just tune into the direct experience, what you might start to notice is that how you know that you're experiencing this is because there are sensations, and these sensations are bodily sensations. Now, when we're moving quickly and reactively in our lives, then we often overlook this, and we might totally miss the fact that these sensations are bodily sensations. But if you just tune into it, you'll start to notice that this is true, and this is really powerful. You can increase the power of this by increasing your awareness and your understanding and knowledge, not only through this sort of open observation and curiosity, but by also introducing gentle touch. So you can just notice where in the body you experience these sensations, and you can use your hand to just gently touch those areas of the body and notice the quality of the tissues in that part of the body. And more often than not, what you'll notice is tension. You'll notice that there are knots, or there's an armored quality, or that it's hard, or it's ropey, or it feels uneven. A non-contracted state of the tissues will feel soft, healthy, and yielding. So anything other than that indicates tension. Now, this awareness is very powerful because it starts to direct us in the right way. Before, as I said, we were reactive, externally focused, looking for the quick fix. But now we can start to tune into these subtler dimensions of ourselves. And just because they're subtle doesn't mean they're not real. They're real because it's actually the most mundane, normal, intimate sense of ourselves. We all know that we are here, we're present, we're conscious, we're aware. That's not an esoteric thing. That's very, very normal. We all have that as our primary sense of ourselves, but we often overlook that. Now we're not overlooking that. Together right now, we're just tuning in to this subtler inner dimension of ourselves and noticing that we have this awareness. Now, our typical way of dealing with things, as I said, is reactive and externally focused. And most of us are conditioned to believe that that's the only power there is. And that if we want change, then that's how we have to do it, is we have to fix something, do something. So the idea that we could actually affect change through awareness, observation, curiosity, and being, or intention, is a new one for many of us. Now, I'm not asking you to believe anything I say, but I'm asking you to check it out for yourself. If you are willing to check it out for yourself, I promise you this will be highly valuable for you, and this really truly is the cure for anxiety. So start to notice that first of all, there are these sensations that are the root of what it is that you have called anxiety in your life. And then you can notice, more likely than not, that there is tension, physical tension in the body, in the areas in which you notice these sensations most strongly. Now, for most of us at this point, as I have suggested, we become aware, but then we want to do something. We might become aware, oh, yes, there's tension. Okay, now I want to do something. Now, I'll tell you a brief story. In 2010, I had been homeless prior to that, but I had recently moved into a cabin in the woods in Maine, and the anxiety that I experienced chronically was so severe that I had a very hard time eating, because every time I would eat, the food would just sit in my stomach. So I was starving and attempting to eat what little I could, but the food would just sit there and it was so uncomfortable. And I was in the habit of lying down and massaging my abdomen, trying to get the food to move. And through doing this, one day I became aware, isn't that weird? My abdomen seems to be chronically tense. Now, when I discovered this, I had the insight, well, maybe if my abdomen wasn't chronically tense, my digestion would be better. So I began to explore through this observation and awareness and curiosity inwardly to see if it was possible that I could begin to loosen, soften, and release that chronic tension. Now, for most of us, when we begin to explore that, we make the mistake of trying to use force or use tension to force the release of tension. Another example of this, when I, years and years ago, when I would drive, I would always notice that my shoulders were really tense. And it was so uncomfortable that I would want to release the tension in my shoulders, but I didn't know how to do that. So I would be trying to release the tension in my shoulders by forcing my shoulders down. But I was using tension to try to force the tension to go away. That didn't work. It only made things worse. In the same way, I had previously, when I was lying there on the floor in the cabin in Maine, massaging my belly, I was trying to use the force of my hand massaging my belly to release the tension, but that didn't work. So I started to have to tune into the subtler dimensions of myself and notice that through this open, curious observation and inquiry, that I started to tune into how I was producing that tension. And through that awareness, I started to discover how I could begin to soften and release that tension. So this is very important. is that you're not going to use tension to get rid of tension. You're going to settle into this subtler dimension of yourself and begin to trust and inquire into this subtler, softer, more expansive aspect or dimension of yourself, which is aware, observant, non-reactive. Again, this is not esoteric. It's just normal. It's your actual normal, most intimate sense of yourself. So everybody can do this because it's who you are. You can just notice that right now you're aware, and that awareness doesn't require anything. But you can tune into that just by slowing down, allowing the conditioned reactivity of your body mind to come and go. So you might notice fidgeting, a lot of thoughts, or not. But whatever happens, let that come and go, and just tune into this awareness that underlies it, this expansive sense of being that underlies all of it. And as you do, you might notice just that settling into that subtler dimension of yourself may already begin to soften some of that tension. Now, if it doesn't, that's fine too. But you might notice that that's true. And you will also almost certainly notice that as you continue to do this, that you become aware of, to some degree, how you create that tension. Now, this is important, is that none of us is biologically obligated to hold tension chronically in our bodies. That tension is something that we can make use of in order to move. So tension is contraction. When muscles are tense, they're contracted. Contraction is the shortening of the muscle to generate movement. But we all are designed to be able to do that at will, voluntarily, volitionally, and our baseline state to be one of rest and relaxation. So any chronic tension or any reactive involuntary tension is actually something that is not necessary, not helpful, not needed, not efficient. And through awareness, we can become aware of how we do that. So do me a favor for just a moment. Make a fist. Now, you could imagine that if you'd been making this fist for the last 20 years, that you might be numb to how you do it. All you might be aware of is that it's uncomfortable, and you can see that it's a fist, but you might not know what to do. So you might go to all kinds of specialists. You might do all kinds of things trying to fix this, but what will actually help you is to become aware of how you do it. When you become aware of how you do it, as you can be aware right now, through that awareness, you can choose to voluntarily release that. This is true of every part of your body. So anywhere in your body in which you are holding chronic or reactive tension, you can become aware of how you do that, and then you can voluntarily release that. So the most important element or ingredient to that is awareness, which is what I'm inviting you to discover right now, is that you are already aware and you can just tune into this subtler dimension of yourself. And that the more you do that, the more you become aware of how you can voluntarily release the tension. So this is the essence of the cure. And if you were to do just this persistently, this will be the cure for your anxiety. When you are aware of how you are making the tension in your body that produces the sensations that you interpret as anxiety, then you will be free to release that tension and therefore no longer have the symptoms that you have called anxiety. Now, before that, you can also just recognize that what's happening is tension that's habitual and reactive, and you can therefore realize in your direct experience that that's the truth of what's happening and that it's not anxiety. So the stories that your mind wants to spin about what this is, where it came from, what it means, and what you have to do, you can then begin to just let go of, because you can realize it's none of those things. It's actually just habitual reactive tension. And so instantaneously, this offers you some relief. And then as you continue to tune into the subtler dimension of being, awareness, you can then begin to notice how you create that tension, and you can start to voluntarily release that, which will then allow you not only to be free of anxiety, which is a story, but also to be free of the tension so that those symptoms don't have to appear. Now, underneath all of this, you'll start to notice that there is actually an emotion. And so Dr. John Sarno, who was a NYU professor and at the medical school, and also an MD working at the NYU hospital, had an incredible, unheard of success rate in curing people of a wide variety of chronic conditions, pain and anxiety, depression, and so forth, utilizing information alone. And that information alone was that underlying all of these conditions is suppressed emotion. And this is absolutely true in my experience. So as you begin to voluntarily release the tension, what you will notice is that underneath is emotion that has been suppressed. Now, most of us believe we have to do something about the emotion, hence the suppression. We've learned that we either have to suppress it or express it. Unfortunately, neither of those work to relieve us of the chronic impulse to either suppress or express the emotion. So there is a third way, and that third way is to continue to settle into the subtler dimension of yourself as awareness. In this non-reactive state, you can simply allow the emotion to be here and allow that emotion to just offer whatever wisdom and guidance it has to offer without trying to do anything about it. Now, this may be challenging at times, but it is absolutely effective. It truly is the one real cure that can offer you benefits that are so numerous I couldn't even begin to list them all off here. It's a very, very powerful thing. So again, just to recap, superficially, we have the conditioned reactive story and label of anxiety. And then we try to fix that, which doesn't work. We've all realized that in our lives. That doesn't work. So then we can start to tune into the subtler dimension of being and notice that underneath that story and label and reactivity is sensation. Underneath that is tension. And as we become aware of that, we can become aware of how we can voluntarily release that. And as we begin to voluntarily release that, we'll start to notice that underneath that is an energy of emotion that we have chronically suppressed. And as we continue then to just settle into and expand into this open awareness and non-reactivity, we can allow for that emotion to just move as it needs to, not to force an expression, not to suppress, but just to be open to and allow the raw experience. This is the cure. This gives you freedom in life. It relieves you of symptoms. It offers you greater happiness and freedom. And I promise you it's true. Now, in addition, we can also help to facilitate this through the development of somatic awareness. And this is what I've been focused on most recently. And so I have been beginning to share a simple somatic approach that utilizes slow, simple movement done with awareness that can allow you to become more aware of the sensations and more quickly become aware of how you can voluntarily release them and simply be open to your own self in a non-reactive way. This tends to increase the rapidity, how quickly we can discover this freedom and this peace and okayness and allowing our own experience so that we can really live that freedom in our lives that allows us to choose moment to moment, even with stressors happening in our lives, that we can choose that freedom and peace. I have 3 children who we homeschool, so there's a lot of stressors in my life, as I'm sure there are a lot of stressors in your life, because we all have stressors in our lives. And I promise you that this information, this knowledge that I'm sharing with you is the thing that allows me and allows many other people to live with the stressors and to allow those stressors not to be bad, but to actually point us to and give us direct access to depths of ourselves and greater freedom that we hadn't previously known. So it's a real turning point that allows us, instead of being reactive and pushing away things, to start to allow and to experience a flow and a release and an integration and a receiving in our lives. And that we start to discover these dimensions of joy and gratitude that we hadn't previously known were possible. I want this for you. It is possible for you. And I hope that you can hear this and receive this and put this into practice in your own life. In this video, I've given you really everything that you need in order to be able to put this into practice in your own life and get the benefits for yourself. If you are interested in learning more or getting more support, there are a couple of ways you can do that. First of all, you can just watch the video over and over. That's how Dr. John Sarno had an 80% cure rate, is just by lecturing. So if you were to listen to this video over and over and really inquire in the way that I've been describing as you're watching the video with my coaching, in the video, you will find tremendous benefits and eventually a complete cure of your anxiety. Other ways that you can get more support, you can also go to joeylott.com/somatics, SOMATICS. And there is a 2.5-hour workshop that you can watch at no charge. Now, that workshop is ostensibly specific to TMJ, jaw, head, neck, and shoulder. But it really, as you will see if you go through the workshop, is a very powerful introduction to this somatic approach, and that is at no charge. Of course, I accept donations gratefully, which you can give at joeylott.com/give. But if you go and watch that video, that workshop, that will be a very powerful introduction that can facilitate a rapid development of somatic awareness that can give you greater freedom much more rapidly. And that's at no charge. So joeylott.com/somatics. And of course, I also have other opportunities. I give public meetings frequently, which are available online, and you can learn more about that at joeylott.com/now, NOW, and you can sign up for my public meeting series, and you can join at no charge and ask questions and get support and coaching in that way. I am here in support and committed to your healing, your freedom, and your discovery of true peace in your life. That's it for now. Thank you.